All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you today, specifically about something that's near and dear to my heart. I am a beekeeper here in the Niagara region, and I want to talk as a teacher today a little bit about how we might bring this conversation into the classroom, specifically about pollinators. So I'm just going to roll right ahead here. So today we're going to talk why do we bring pollinator education into the classroom, a little bit about inviting curiosity, that whole student-led, student-driven, inquiry-based learning, and then how we might take action based on their learning in the classroom. So I think it's going to be a really good conversation today. I want to introduce myself. My name is Shaunna MacQuarrie. I am a beekeeper here in the Niagara region. I am also an Ontario certified teacher, a National Geographic certified educator, and I work with Eggscape as their project assistant. So all of these things really work together very well. I absolutely love sharing my own food journey and my love of education with Ontario students and Ontario teachers, and I think it has really, this whole journey I've been on has really helped inform the way I teach and the way I have conversations with students when I am teaching. So today's session, feel free to join in the conversation. You can unmute yourself when we're prompted for conversation and discussion throughout the presentation, or you can use the chat function. I have the chat in front of me today. You can participate as much or as little as you feel comfortable doing so. And any time that we're actually getting into like sort of a participation-based activity or discussion, you'll see that little puzzle symbol, and just sort of as an indicator to get ready to jump in and be part of the conversation. And just so you are aware, we are recording this, and the links will be available after the call as well. So don't feel like you have to take notes. You can always go back and watch later. So today I am here representing Eggscape. I am one of their teacher ambassadors. We'll talk a little bit more about Eggscape's programs later on, but really here at Eggscape, we work to just spark that student interest in agriculture and ag-related careers, and help them build confidence, sort of understanding that everybody has their own food journey, and just help them identify their role in food and agriculture. We're all about delivering unbiased, factual, and relevant and interactive agriculture and food education. And we love just linking arms with teachers across our province and helping them sort of bring these conversations into their classroom. So today, to get things started, let's just talk a little bit about pollinators. We hear the word a lot. What does it mean? Why are they important? Why is this an important conversation for us to bring into the classroom? I would love to hear from you guys. Feel free to unmute or pop your comments in the chat, and I'll read through some of them. But I know that it's certainly a topic that students are very interested in. It's one that I hear a lot. I get a lot of questions about as a beekeeper. Yes, for food. We hear a lot about how pollinators, without them, certain plants couldn't produce the fruit that we get to eat. So that's definitely part of it. Any other thoughts or comments? Maybe why is it important? Why should we be bringing this conversation into the classroom? Just give you guys a second. Absolutely, when we're talking, so Megan says pollinators are part of the ecosystem. They're important for food, foodways, ecological chains, the whole work. So it's not even just our food, it's part of that nature cycle, the food chain in nature, and helping them understand, yes, the importance of biodiversity. Pollinators are, very important to just the way nature operates. So it is an important conversation, and it's one that I think kids are really curious about. And it's one that maybe we don't know how to bring into the classroom quite so easily. It can be a little bit tricky answering kids' questions because they have a lot of them. And it's a big conversation. There's a lot. Yes, helping students understand the myths about pollinators and actually finding like the factual info. And I mean, that's at the heart of what Eggscape loves to do, is just help answer those big questions, and helping them find good, factual, accurate information. Awesome. Okay, so understanding a little bit about pollinators, I can share a little bit from my experience. So when I started beekeeping, I certainly didn't know as much as I know now. But really understanding some of these big areas, these big questions. Who needs help? And is it just bees? Is it just butterflies? Like, what's the deal here with all these different pollinators? And which ones are the best pollinators? We always, as a beekeeper, I hear a lot about people wanting to help the bees, but they don't really know which bees should they be helping and how should they be helping them, and are there certain bees that need more help than other bees, and they don't really understand sort of the complexities of that conversation. As a beekeeper, I consider myself a helper of bees. However, my honeybees, I mean, they have plenty of food, and when they are low on food or they need a little boost, that's part of my job, is reading what's going on in the hives, and I make sure that they have what they need to continue to survive and thrive. We make sure that they're cozy for the winter. Like, we're constantly checking their health and well-being and adjusting the way we care for them. Our native pollinators, so honeybees are an introduced species of bee to North America, and all of the other pollinators, our native pollinators, they don't have a beekeeper to take care of them in the same way. So they still have a lot of the same requirements, but they don't necessarily have people looking out for them on a regular basis. And a fun fact when it comes to honeybees versus native bees, honeybees are really, 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 really good at packing away nectar. They love having that extra nectar stored. They do utilize pollen as a food source as well, but they're really, really good at packing away that nectar, which is why we can actually take some of it from them for ourselves as humans, and they still have plenty left over. Our native pollinators don't necessarily utilize the nectar as a more important source. Pollen is a huge part of that, and some of them will eat the nectar directly but not store it. So we're dealing with a lot of the different kinds of pollinators that are actually a little bit more effective at bringing the pollen from one plant to another. So an example here, I have this little video here. So this is actually one of our native bumblebees, and she is on some common comfrey that just sort of randomly surprised me in my garden this year. And if you listen very carefully, she's doing a thing called buzz pollinating. So the comfrey flowers are sort of tube shaped. They're quite deep, and it's hard to get to the nectar and pollen way inside. And so she will actually buzz pollinate by actually vibrating and buzzing when she goes up into the flower. So hopefully you can hear this when I hit play here, and you can just see what I mean. So when she does that, when she buzzes inside, that pollen falls down from the flower onto her, and she can then pack it into her little pollen baskets to take it and store it and use it for food. So, different insects will pollinate in different ways, and that's just one example of how one of our native pollinators does it. Now, there are many, many other pollinators in nature, not just bees. I mentioned butterflies earlier. There are different kinds of flies as well. So there are lots of other insects. Bees are one of them. Wasps, hornets, believe it or not. People tend to give them a bit of a bad rep because they can be a little bit aggressive, more aggressive than some of the other kinds, but they still play a really important role. So there's a lot of these insects that are very, very important to that sort of ecological, those cycles that happen in our ecosystem and in nature. So I think that bringing this conversation into the classroom from a few different angles, exploring beekeepers and the role that they play in sort of our human food systems, and learning the differences between honeybees and some of our native pollinators. And when it comes to how to get kids connected to helping bees or pollinators, I think that it's easier for them to focus on all of nature. And it's easier to bring these conversations and these activities into classrooms when we let them focus on sort of the big picture of nature. They can certainly learn about the work that a beekeeper does, because beekeepers work very closely with farmers. They have, we have partnerships with local farmers, and in terms of how they manage their food supply, and that's a really cool lesson and a cool conversation as well. And there's a lot of relationship between how a beekeeper cares for their bees and nature at the same time. And like even farmers are caring for nature, in their own way, and it's very important no matter which angle you're looking at this conversation from. Okay, let's move forward here. Okay, so when it comes to bringing this conversation into the classroom, what we need to do, and this is, I've been really focusing on using the word inviting. I've tended in my professional career to use the word allow a lot. And my bad, when we are allowing something, we're giving permission for it to happen. And when it comes to student-led or student-driven learning and inquiry-based learning, we really need to change that language to inviting and encouraging and inspiring, rather than allowing them. And I mean, I still make the mistake, rather than allowing them to do something, we want to make sure that we keep that really open and inviting language. So we want to invite curiosity into our classroom, and part of that, above and beyond any of the actual activities we do, is about creating a safe space for questioning. Kids, especially when you get into the sort of middle school-ish age range, you're really, you're starting to get into the whole social pressure situations where they might be worried that their questions sound silly. So a lot of the work in creating that safe space for inquiry learning to happen is about creating a safe space for curiosity and questioning, and just really encouraging all kinds of questions and all kinds of conversations. And then when you get to the point where you're introducing whatever conversation you're about to embark on with the students, it's about prompting their curiosity with something like a statement or a photo or a video, and not a question. We're really good as teachers at creating questions. We've had lots of practice, and we want to inspire critical thinking. But sometimes when we ask a question, we're actually limiting where the kids can take it. So I love just prompting them with something really open-ended, and just sort of seeing where it goes, because that can also inform our where we take the learning and where we encourage and facilitate that learning to go. So inviting the student questioning, letting them be curious without our interference. I don't know, for some of you, when you're asking the students to write down something, it could be a question, or it could just be their thoughts on something, and you walk around the classroom or whatever, and they haven't written anything down, and the first thing that comes to mind is to give them examples. And if we get away from being specific in our examples and more about helping them see what's in front of them, whether they're looking at that statement or that photo or that video, I think that that's just helping them build that skill, that observation skill, that they can then learn how to ask their own questions without us really interfering. Sometimes for people like me, that means I have to sort of back away. I can be a bit of an interfering facilitator sometimes, and I just need to back off sometimes and let them do what they do. Kids are naturally curious about things, and I think that allowing, or there's that word again, encouraging or inviting them to just be able to be with that prompt, video, photo, statement, or whatever it is that you want to inspire their thinking, just allowing them, there it is again, encouraging them to have that, just to be in that time and in that space, and backing away and giving them the space to experience that. I think that's, it's not only going to help them learn what needs to be done to do the work of questioning, but it's also going to help them build this important skill. And it's going to encourage us to facilitate authentic learning because it's what they're interested in, and help us it helps inform the next steps that we might take as educators in the classroom. Okay, so we're getting to the point where I'm going to need you guys to be ready to ask some questions in the chat. So I mentioned about a photo or a video or a statement. So basically, step by step here, we would have whatever the prompt is, and then like set a timer for a specific amount of time and be clear about, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to write down as many questions as you can. And there's rules here, like, don't edit those questions. Don't worry about your spelling. Don't judge your questions. Just get as many down as you can, and try not to think about them too much. Just like, what do you see? What's that first instinct and that first thoughts that come to your mind? Sometimes it'll come out not in the form of a question. We can fix that later. Just get those thoughts down, and then we'll invite them to sort through those questions, and work through them and figure out, how they want to use those questions beyond it. So let's try this out just to kind of get you guys, give you a feel for what that feels like. So you can use the chat so that we can actually all see the questions. Or if you're really comfortable just popping off mute, you can do that and just share your ideas. That's fine too. So I'm going to show you a prompt. Okay, I know the context of the prompt. I'm not going to tell you the context of the prompt. We can talk about it after if you'd like. But there's going to be a statement at the top of the page, and there's going to be a video. I'll play the video clip, and you can, as it's playing or right after it's done playing, I want to see questions like crazy in the chat. Just fill it with anything that comes to mind. Think of, where your questions, like a location, what's involved in, in terms of location, themes that you see, like it can be absolutely anything that just, whatever inspires you or makes you curious. Just allow your brain to sort of go there and share as much as you can. Here we go.
What's that?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Oh my gosh, isn't it gorgeous? Wow, look at all those bees.
So this was the bottom of the colony here. You can see the debris and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is the top. So you should generally find honey up here if there is. There's not a lot. And the brood should be kind of down here.
So cool.
Okay, I see lots of questions coming in here. Let me just scroll up here a little bit. Okay, so why are you not wearing gloves? I like that one. I'd love to answer all these questions. So you see what I'm seeing here in the chat. So I see why do pollinators need our help? Our prompt is pollinators need our help to thrive. Okay, so I see why do they need our help? Some specific ones about like, why is the tree being smoked? Is this dangerous? Why are you not wearing gloves? What's happening here? Why are the bees in a tree? And if that tree is cut down, where will they live now? Why isn't he wearing gloves? How many would be in a colony like that? What will happen to them now? Are there multiple queens? What type of bees are these? How do you know so much about bees? How did they get in there? Why are there bees in the tree? So do you see, we're seeing some themes here? Why are we not getting stung? That's a question we asked that day too. Did it hurt the bees when the tree got cut down? How can you find the queen? Okay, so there's a lot of very specific questions here. And when we're working through, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer all of your questions today, but when you have this diverse, deep list of questions in front of you, there's so many different ways we could explore this. And I don't want to say, okay, me as the beekeeper, I'm going to answer your questions. We do that all the time as teachers. It's easy for us to just answer the question. What we want is the kids to find the questions on their own. So for example, let me see here. What types of bees are these? Okay. Where could the students find the answer to that question? How could they be encouraged to search that answer out themselves? Maybe they could find a beekeeper and ask the expert, right? Maybe they could do some reading about the kinds of trees that bees live in. How did they get in there? What will happen to bees now? Right? All of these questions they're coming from a place of curiosity, and depending on the activity and sort of the direction that this conversation in the class is going, there are ways the students can find the answers for themselves. It would be easy for me to say that the city was cutting this tree down and the guy that was cutting them down got stung a whole bunch, realized there was, a bunch of bees in it, and called a beekeeper, who then, the beekeepers went and we took that to our apiary and safely and carefully removed the bees and put them into a beehive. It would be easy for me to get up and say that, since I happen to know the context of this particular prompt. But where's the real learning in that? Will the kids remember that tomorrow? Does it mean anything to them now? If they are forced to just think outside the box and, given that opportunity, given that space to just ask these questions and then figure out where they can find those answers, there's a much more authentic process. Yeah, it takes more time, but it's so worth it. So once they have all their questions, once they have all the questions, then it's time to review them. Okay, so maybe not all of the questions are going to be the ones that they settle on that they want to explore. So helping them kind of weed this list down a little bit, editing them to make sure that all of the questions are actually questions. Sometimes in the moment of writing down what you're thinking based on the prompt in front of you, you might just make a statement like, wow, there's a lot of bees in there. Well, maybe the question then would be, how many bees are in there, right? So it's allowing them that time to just fix and edit and tweak. They can sort them into categories. I look at your list of questions here. There's a lot about, the beekeeper's gear and, what the beekeeper's doing in that video. There's some questions about the size of the colony and how many there would be, and, the kinds of bees that would be in there. So, you can look for those consistencies and look for those themes and kind of help them encourage them to see where are the trends, because those trends are also going to tell a story. If I were to look at, one of your, some of the comments that just one of you made, there might be a bit of a theme, maybe it's all about the beekeeper and that's what you're most curious, but then the other person might be really, really curious about, how did bees end up in the tree and what do bees do when they just live in nature and what happens when humans interfere with that. So depending on what the list looks like in front of each individual student, they may be able to take this in many different directions, and giving them the space to do that, it's going to diversify the learning in the classroom, especially when they get to a point where they can share with each other about what they learned, because it's something that they're curious about and they're passionate about. And then, of course, narrowing it down even further. Let's get it down to like one really good question that then they are prepared to find the answer to, and teaching them to look through different lenses, looking at things at a local level, looking at it at a national level, looking at it through a global lens. How would those questions change? When you're looking at, beekeeping on a global scale versus beekeeping at a local level, or, the different kinds of bees from around the world or whatever. Like, it just depends on what that prompt is and what that list looks like in front of them. But, encouraging them to look at their questions through different lenses and sort of adding and editing a little bit here and there to really come down to what do they really want to learn today? And then again, it can be this, we can do this as a class. We can also do this as individuals, and it can be used for much more than just a pollinator discussion. This process can be used for anything that we do in the class, to encourage the student-led process. So then we have to use those questions. So, you know, you have your one question, now the fun begins, right? Now it's about, you know, look at that, I even use the word let in my thing. And that's that language again, right? You know, encouraging them to learn on their own as much as possible, unimpeded by teacher influence. You know, how can they find the questions to their, or the answers to their question? You know, who could they talk to, or who could be invited to speak to help them learn, so that they can get that firsthand experience? You know, how do they then wish to demonstrate that learning has taken place? You know, we know kids are all different, and the way they express themselves and the way they can express what they've learned. I mean, there's tons of different ways that they can do that. And each kid might have a preferred method of doing that. So inviting the diversity of ways that they might respond to what they've learned and how they might share that with the class, you know, is just another way of allowing that student-led experience to become an everyday part of what you do in your classrooms. And then, of course, if they decide they really want to take action, this is where what we've learned in a classroom and through this questioning process can become like the forever thing that they remember they did in school that time, right? This is where we go from a teacher-led project to a student-led experience, and facilitated by probably their future favorite teacher, right? Because, you know, they're taking that learning into the real world to help solve a problem and make a difference. So we often hear the term service project. You know, we are going to do a service project, and I think that that is a very that kind of limits. It's very teacher driven, you know, where often you will see there's a specific project we're going to do as a classroom. We're going to build a pollinator garden. We're going to, you know, do a neighborhood cleanup, you know, whatever the situation is. That becomes like a service project where it's task oriented and it's fairly teacher driven. But if it's question centered and it's inquiry and student led, we get into service learning, where the kids get to this place where they want to take action because they led themselves there. And that action is going to be a direct reflection of the journey that they've just been on. So it's not just about doing a class project anymore. It's about continuing the learning in their own way through a task or an action that will make a difference in the world. They get to own this project, and the learning then will never stop. It's not, oh good, we did a good thing today, now we forget about it and go on to the next unit. It's this thing that has stimulated sort of the next steps. So as an example here, let me just move forward. So an example scenario, for example, the big question may have been, how can we help native pollinators in our community? Okay, so it's a very geographic specific place. And then what, you know, they would be researching things like, you know, what do the native pollinators need to survive and thrive? What can we do for them to help them have the things that they need to survive and thrive? You know, what is already in place in our community? Are there programs? Are there other things that we could connect with or learn from or partner with? You know, helping, you know, giving them that opportunity to sort of explore what's already being done and what might still need to be done, and making sure they understand what is needed to look at the big picture. So that's that research section. That's where they're doing the work of the learning about the topic and the situation and unpacking whatever that prompt was that led to the question about how they can help pollinators in their own community. You know, then they get to brainstorm, what's the action step? What could we do? Now they're passionate about it. They know that there's things they can do to help pollinators. What can they do? Then you invite them to come up with their list. Okay, you know, they might choose to restore a section of schoolyard back to nature. I've seen that in action at a school not far from where I live here in Niagara, and it's fascinating. The kids, even though they did it in, you know, their grade 1-2 class, these kids are now, in grade 4, 5, or 6, and they still see the fruits of that hard work, and they can experience the pollinators and nature. And it's amazing, because it's this sort of ongoing learning and experiencing of that action that they took. They could prepare and run some sort of educational session for the members of their school, or even the members of their community. So there's many things that they could come up with. That's just a couple of examples that I came up with, but there's so many things that the kids could do. And I'll tell you what, if you give them the space, you just kind of like back off a little bit and give them the space to come up with their own list, you'll be shocked at the stuff that they come up with. Man, kids think of things that, I don't know, maybe we forget how to come up with things as we get older. It's amazing how much they want to help, and not just in nature. Yes, they can become advocates. That's another possible action, right? So they could write to places like City Council to encourage, natural spaces, or becoming a bee-friendly community or pollinator-friendly community. Yes, the list is endless. I mean, they literally could do so many things, and that's just about their community. That's something that's, sort of a tangible thing. But they may then personally, because this was such an authentic learning and action experience for them, they may just naturally on their own, because they've become so attached to this experience, that you find that they're doing a lot of these same things at home. Maybe they're restoring part of their yard back to nature. Maybe they're, talking with their family members about it. Like they become little advocates for, whatever the purpose is behind their exploration. Yeah, and then of course, there's always, this is, I think, probably, there's the assessment piece, which I would like to think isn't the most important part, but the reflective piece is, and I think they kind of go hand in hand. As educators, we're constantly having to make sure that we know that learning took place, and we're able to communicate that via report cards and so on, and meeting curriculum connections and all that kind of thing, or program area connections, whatever. Inviting the kids to respond to their experience, respond to the journey, rather, without us asking questions. It's really easy to print up a sheet where you ask very specific reflective questions. If we can get away from guiding that and directing that, I think we'll see much more authentic and engaged reflection pieces from our students, encouraging them to respond in whatever way is most comfortable for them, whether it's written, sort of a journaling type thing, or more artistic or multimedia and technology based. There's so many different things that they could do. And one thing I've seen that's really, really cool is going through that questioning process that we sort of started with, doing it again at the end. Okay, so you've learned some things and you've taken action and you've done all this wonderful stuff. Now what questions do you have? Maybe they started at the community level, but now they want to take it to a national level, or, globally, or whatever. Maybe they just, there's new questions that have come up as a result of their journey. This is the piece here that can inform us as educators about, where do they want to go with this? How can we just invite them to continue that curiosity and never stop asking questions? And I think that is at the heart of the human experience, always being curious and always being lifelong learners. These are valuable lessons for students to learn at whatever age that they're at. And then in terms of assessment, this whole process, there are so many little checkpoints that it's quite easy then to figure out, and it's the learning is very visible in this kind of experience. So I think that, ticking those boxes as educators or, program directors or leaders, I think it's a lot easier to do that with this kind of student-led process than it is if we were to sort of stick to more traditional methods of learning in the classroom and sharing. Yeah, so I think, are there any questions? Sorry, are there any questions about that whole process before I move on. You can feel free to unmute if you want to just chat a little bit. I do want to share a little bit more about AgScape and the kinds of things that we have coming up and the different programs that we have available to you. But if there's anything specific about this process here, I would love to I'd love to chat that out with you guys. You can always hold them till the end too. We can always chat, you know, at the end when I'm done talking about some of these programs too. So I mentioned at the beginning, I am a teacher ambassador with Eggscape. So this program is so much fun. We offer free lessons, 60 to 75 minutes in length, tailored to the whole sort of experience, depending on what's needed in the classroom. You know, all of the teachers that deliver the lessons are Ontario certified teachers. All of the information is, you know, fact-based and balanced. You know, we want kids to be confident and to be critical thinkers, especially when they're, you know, being faced with different things that might be confusing to them in the media and social media and so on. So right now it's delivered from grades 7 to 12. I do believe we're looking to expand a little bit into lower grades. That hopefully will come soon. And teachers can request as many lessons as they want. There's no limits here. So it's a great program. There's all of these different topics, local food, food security, food safety, and so on. There's everything about like technology and business and economics. It's a pretty robust program with lots of different applications depending on the classes that you're teaching. It's a lot of fun. So that link right there, eggscape.ca/request-TA, that's where you can request them. I think today is actually the last day to request for this school year, but we are already taking bookings for next school year. So don't hesitate to do that. We will make sure you are taken care of. And we're always looking for Ontario certified teachers to become part of our teacher ambassador workforce. It's a super flexible position. It fits kind of into any part-time, full, you know, whatever you're kind of looking for. We're doing all of them virtual this year. Hopefully someday the world will open up enough that we can get back into classrooms too. But virtual will always be an option now, I think, because it's just, it's been so wonderful this year being able to connect with students across the province whom we haven't been able to visit before. Yeah, so if you have questions there, you can email Mercedes Unwin, our project or program and resource manager. She can definitely answer your questions and hook you up if you have questions about that. This is one of my babies. The Business of Food is it's a teacher professional development course, and it's divided into two sections. There's the 101 and the 102, and we look in detail, in depth, at a lot of these big food topics like local food and climate change, and you know, just how agriculture, the technology and innovation and business and economics and all the kinds of stuff, all the things that agriculture covers. And it's these nice sort of bite-sized groups of teacher candidates and educators that come together to learn about these things together. It's about 40 to 50 hours of online self-guided learning. So there's, it's very flexible. I've had a lot of teacher candidates manage to work it into their scheduling this year. A lot of teachers even managed to do it. God help them during this crazy year. You know, there's a bunch that actually managed to go through it. And we just have such a good time talking about all of these big topics and finding ways to help them bring this education into their classrooms. So you get a certificate at the end, and there are 2 different sections. So it's totally free for Ontario educators, thanks to just our donor supported scholarships. So yeah, if you have questions, again, you can email myself. My email will be at the end. And then that link there would take you to the information. And Mercedes is putting all these links in the chat because she's awesome. Okay. And yes, the next session of Business of Food starts in early July and runs for 6 weeks. And then there will be another session in the fall as well. We also offer Think Egg career competitions. This year, they were all done virtually. the students, they get to connect with different representatives from across the industry. Oh my goodness, the list is endless. It's such a neat program. They've all this year were delivered via Zoom. So the way we had it set up was each representative would move through the different groups of, so like we had breakout rooms set up with each class. So the teacher and their students would be in a breakout room, and the industry representatives would cycle through, and they would do different games and activities and just sort of teach them about the different career opportunities that are in agriculture. It was a fabulous thing to be part of. It's also a really fun thing to do in person when we're allowed to do that. And yeah, if you want to request a Think Ag career competition for your school, there's a link there as well to connect you to that. Almost there. Eggscape also has a free digital resource library. So there's many lesson plans and resources and activities that are aligned with the Ontario curriculum over several subject areas and grade levels, right? K through 12, there's something for everybody in there for sure. So you can go to the resources, eggscape.ca/resources. Some really, really fun and engaging activities there to help you explore with your students. And we do have, we've been offering these amazing food and farm field trips in partnership with Farm and Food Care over the last couple months. And we do have 2 more for the more senior grades coming up. Ryan Cullen's a field supervisor at the W. Galen Weston Center for Food. And then Gavin Robertson he's at the Niagara College as part of the viticulture program there. So those 2 are still available for registration. So that would be at that link there. And then we have all of our past field trips are up on our YouTube page. So it's just youtube.com/Eggscape. And you can see all of them, including a beekeeping one that yours truly did just this week with my husband, Beekeeper Ken. So we had a really good time sharing about that. And all of those virtual field trips are up there, and you can watch them anytime with your groups or students. And yes, this is the end. We've come to basically almost the end of our local food week. A couple more days, but the school week part is behind us. So we had these farm and food field trips. We did strawberry cheese making, beekeeping, sheep, and then today there was a potato farmer as well that shared. So again, those are all up on our YouTube page. And we also have a free digital resource package. It's full of lessons and activities and resources for kindergarten right through grade 12. So you can still download that if you're interested. Again, it's all free, which is wonderful. And there we are, questions. Now I did see some questions come up as I moved through all that. Let me go back here, scroll. My experience, well, I share more about my experience as a beekeeper. Sure, my experience as a beekeeper has been, I think the word I would use is, words would be crazy adventure. I'm someone that grew up not knowing anything really about agriculture. And the more I've learned, the more I've fallen in love with just about how important the work is that our farmers are doing to help feed the world. And my husband and I were both always a little curious about bees. And I don't think we really knew that about each other. And it just kind of came up. One day we were talking about, just farming and different sort of agriculture ventures that we were curious about. And we both mentioned beekeeping, and a friend just sort of randomly offered us some gear as we were talking. And so we said, okay. And we got into it. And so that was about 6 or 7 years ago now. And together with our kids, we have built a little beekeeping business. And depending on the time of year and which season we're in, we can have anywhere from 20 to 30 beehives sort of scattered at our different apiaries around Niagara. We do work with one local farmer to help pollinate their orchards and their berries, which has been such an amazing experience working directly with farmers. So that's been really fun, but it's been kind of magical. I don't know, there's this peace that sort of washes over us when we're just sitting there working with the bees, listening to them and watching them work. It's become this special thing that my husband and I do when the kids are at school, or in the summertime, it's something that our kids get to do with us. We're teaching our children about our food system, and the role that they play in their own journey with food. They're learning about how to, handle money and manage their own little side business within our business. We're teaching them about, financial responsibility. I don't know, it's taught us way more than we ever dreamed it would. Let's see here. Do I have any suggestions for the type of evaluations or rubrics within the inquiry-based framework? So peer-to-peer, test-based, interview. You know what? I think it's hard because we definitely, as educators, we lean towards that tangible. We want the chart, we want the number, we want that specific thing that tells us they got an A or a 4 on the rubric or whatever. And I think that if we're going to do a rubric-based assessment within this sort of questioning, this open-ended exploration type questioning journey, I think that it really needs to be, the rubric would absolutely have to, I don't want to use the word allow, but it would have to allow for diversity in the way the kids respond, right? So I think that you can totally do that. You can have, things like that. But I think like checklists, might really be a good thing. Just making anecdotal notes, if I'm too busy writing notes about what I'm seeing, I might actually stay out of their way and let them continue the journey. If I'm busy writing notes about, how they are engaging with the prompt and, the kinds of questions that they're writing down, like we can keep all of that. And we can also look at the questions they had in the initial stages. And, if we do that questioning activity a couple more times as we get, move through it, you can kind of compare, like, are they learning how, we're looking at like critical thinking strategy and stuff too. We're not just assessing their knowledge of pollinators or whatever the topic is. So I think that there's a lot of different ways that we could do that. I think I would stay away of anything that puts sort of that pressure on the kids to perform something. That would be my inclination. Let me scroll down. There's more questions. Let's see here. Is there anything else? No. Yes, you could get the students or the class to create the rubric. That's an awesome idea. I love that. They could help put together what the standard for success is going to look like for the activity. I love that. That's really cool. Okay. Are there any other questions or thoughts as we wrap up today? Just making sure I didn't miss anything. How do you encourage students to get involved with agriculture and food? It's funny, as someone that grew up not knowing anything really about the agriculture world, I often will come across kids that ask me, well, why should I care? Right? And I mean, my honest answer to them is, I know how you feel because I totally didn't. I was raised in a part of Canada that was very rocks and lakes and trees. And I love the experience that I had with food. I mean, we always had a garden growing up, so I understood the thrill of harvesting and enjoying your own food. My family, we hunted and we fished and things like that. We foraged and stuff. So I understood about providing our own food, but I didn't understand how all the other food got to the grocery store. And the more I've learned in my own journey, the more I see ways for us to connect students to their own food journey. And I think we have to realize as educators that everyone's going to come from a different experience with this whole, approach to their food journeys. And I think that to encourage them to care and to get involved is to meet them where they're at. Okay, I was that person that did not understand that there was more to agriculture than than what I knew. I had the stereotypical storybook version of farmer in my head when I thought of agriculture, and that was it. You know, I hadn't been on a farm. I didn't really know farm people. I think my only experience growing up of a farm situation would have been the agricultural fair that was a little further out of town. And we did that once a year, and I really only went for the midway. So I didn't really understand all that stuff. But as I learned more, you know, I learned probably the most profound thing was about storytelling. You know, when I grew up, there was fish stories and hunting stories, and, you know, the fish was really this big, but they said it was this big. And like, that was my experience of storytelling with our food. And then I met my husband's family, and they had stories about all of the food on their plates. So it was different. They knew who was growing their potatoes, and they knew where their pork came from, and they knew where their beef came from. They knew that so-and-so was having a tough year on the farm this year. Like, they knew all these stories, and, you know, whatever is potlucked had a story, and they knew the story, and they shared the story. And that was the first time I had experienced it with normal food, you know, the food from the grocery store kind of food. And it just had really sent me down this own learning journey for myself. And I think if we help kids understand the story of the food that they're eating on a daily basis, and then as they get older, encourage them to, you know, learn how to discern the food that's in front of them and make those food decisions, you know, I think it'll become a natural part of that process and that conversation. So I know it's kind of a sort of a loaded answer to that question, but I really think that it comes down to understanding and learning the story about their food, and, you know, where it came from and who was involved in it, and, you know, getting to know that process. So, fun facts about bees. Oh goodness. I have many fun facts about bees. I could scroll back and answer some of the questions from earlier. Let me do that. Let me go up here. So the tree that was being smoked in that thing. So I mentioned that was a city tree. Someone asked, where would they live now? So when we get a call out, that's what we would consider. I guess we would consider that a cutout, where the tree was being cut down because it was dead. And, you know, the city guy got stung a whole bunch and decided he wasn't going to deal with that anymore. We took the piece of the trunk that was hollow and had bees living in it out to the farm. And that was a really exciting day because my husband actually cut that open with a chainsaw, fully expecting to get stung, and he did not get stung once. And they were just so chill. And I think that is probably our number one fact that we love to share about bees, is that, you know, they generally don't want to sting. I think we got more questions about that after our bee tour than anything else. Just kids really concerned about, like, well, how often do you get stung? And, you know, does it hurt when you get stung? And, you know, will the bees sting me if I see them when they're, you know, on the flowers in my backyard? And, you know, kids are very afraid of that. And, you know, beekeepers to an extent can be a little intimidated by bees, especially in a situation like that picture or that video I showed you. But they were really chill that day, and we were managed to just cut the chunks out really carefully, put them right into one of our open wooden frames. We used rubber bands to hold them in, and we just slowly relocated them over to one of our beehives, and helped them, you know, get settled over time. And they actually they're still one of our happiest colonies, one of our most strongest colonies that we have. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. But yeah, bees don't typically want to sting. You know, we have a lot of experience getting stung. There's always a competition you know, between my husband and I about, you know, who's going to get the first sting of the season. And then, you know, we keep a tally on, you know, how many do you have versus how many did I get? And you just kind of get used to it. I don't know. I don't find them quite as offensive as like a hornet or a wasp sting. But yeah, no, it's been a real adventure. Beekeeping is something we're really proud of and proud to be part of. Really enjoy it. Cool. Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to thank everybody for joining me today, and I just really, really appreciate you know, you participating and you know, joining in. My email is in the chat and also right here. So yeah, so thank you so much. You know, it was my pleasure sharing with you. And yeah, hopefully we'll do this again sometime. Thanks a lot.